Hello, this video is for the users that do not have the forecast sheet function in Excel. So there's a little bit of extra work that you have to do, but it's not a big deal. We will get it figured out. So for the Delwarka data, um, we're going to go ahead and I will show you how to recreate what the forecast sheet does. And so to give you a visualization of what we're looking to do, we are looking to visualize or to recreate this. And we're going to do it with formulas. So how we do that is there are two ways that you can do a manual forecast, and there's a linear and then ETS. Linear, I initially wanted to do that, but we're not going to do linear because it doesn't account for seasonality. It just creates a line. ETS does smoothing, which is very nice, and it allows us to look at seasonality and then confidence intervals. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, I already worked it out, but we're going to go to the bottom of the Delwarka data, and we're going to add a couple more months. It looks like we're expecting as far out as October 2019. So let's drag this down until we get to October of 2019. October 2019. Okay. So drag the dates down. It should auto, if you pick a couple dates and then drag it down, it should know the pattern that you're trying to do and populate that, which is great. But once you get that, we're going to do a formula called forecast.ets. ETS is the smoothing, that is the abbreviation for smoothing, exponential smoothing. So what we're going to do is it gives us some things that we need to put in the formula. And if it's in brackets like this, that means it's optional. And if you don't include these settings, it will use default, and default is your friend. So for this class, we're going to use default. It's going to detect seasonality for you automatically. It's going to, you don't need to know the data completion or aggregation type. It's going to do that for you. So we're going to use the default, but we do need to fill out the target date, the values, and the timeline. So the target date is whatever date that you're looking to get the value for. The values are all of the previous values. And one thing I'm going to do that's important, because eventually we're going to be dragging this formula down, we need to put we need to put dollar signs in front of B and 2 and then B and 37 to kind of lock those in place. And so you can do that by highlighting the column and hitting F4. And it will mean that you can drag this formula down, and this red highlighted area will stay where it's at and not get dragged down with it as well. Because we don't want to do forecasts off forecasted data. We only want to do a forecast off of the original data set. Next is our timeline, which we're going to select here. And once again, we're going to hit the F4 button. We're going to highlight these and hit the F4 button, or you can manually put dollar signs in here. Either way will work. And then we don't care about seasonality, it's going to detect it for us. And then you hit enter. So you can double click or drag it down, and you can see that this March 2019 date is based off of the original data set. Now if you don't have the dollar signs in front of here, I'll just show you. What could happen is you drag it down, oops, so you get rid of these dollar signs. Now your numbers get super wonky because you're not tying it to like a stable You're not tying it to the underlying data. You don't want to do a forecast off of forecast data. You want to do it off of real data. So that's how you create that part. That's gonna, if we want to graph this, you can highlight it, and you'll be able to see a line graph, and that looks actually pretty similar to, or identical to, to what the forecast sheet tells us. So that's pretty cool, that's good, but we also want to have these upper and lower confidence bounds. So how do we do that? I will show you. We are going to do, let's see here, forecast.ets.confidence interval. Once again, we're going to get the target date. We're going to get the values, and once again, we're going to hit F4 around those to lock them in place. We're going to get the timeline, and we're going to hit F4 around those to lock it in place. And confidence level, we're going to leave it to default, and it's going to default to 95%, which is what I asked for, and that's what I'm always going to ask for. But you could change it to whatever you want it to be. Seasonality, it's going to detect it for us. We're just going to leave default as our friend. And now we have a confidence interval for all these dates. Now what does this tell us? Well, it's 95%, so it's roughly 2 standard deviations above or below the average. So what that means is to get the lower bound, we're just going to take the average and subtract the lower interval. To get the higher bound, we're going to take the average and add this. And these are our lower and upper bounds. So now we're going to need to graph it to represent it to, once again, our goal of mimicking this. We're going to need to graph it so that we can include these lines. So the first thing that we're going to need to do to be able to graph this is let's actually let's get this confidence interval and move it into the F column, and then do this to get, we got the lower and upper columns together. This is going to make it easier for us to make the graph. And what we're going to do is just copy this over, and so we can create 3 lines. And let's see here. And then we can insert it, and you can see it's kind of wonky, but you would, if you were doing this professionally, you'd want to format it. I'm not worried about the formatting. I'm just worried about being able to recreate that forecast chart, and that's what we've been able to do here. So thank you. I'm sorry this is extra time for you because you don't have this button on here, but it's important that we're able to forecast in Excel, and this gives us that ability.